Recently, I lost my sojo, and this is the dress that I made to help me get it back. You might be wondering what sojo is, and essentially it's slang for sewing motivation. It's happened before. Usually after sewing a really good handful of items, I'll eventually put my machine away for a few weeks or even a few months, and then I really struggle to find the motivation to pull it out again. Don't get me wrong, I love sewing and I love creating patterns, but sometimes drafting patterns is just a little bit too difficult. It involves a lot of math, and I don't actually enjoy drawing everything out on paper. So I figured there was only one thing left to do: try something completely new. I ordered a mannequin from One Forms and decided that I would make a dress using fabric that I had in my stash for a few months. This beautiful hydrangea fabric needed to be made into a garment that would do it justice. A flowy, feminine frock that would be as eye-catching as the print, and that is exactly what I came up with. So join me on my journey as I learn a new skill and get myself out of my sewing rut. Draping is when you use fabric to physically drape the pattern pieces onto a mannequin. This can help you to achieve designs that are really difficult to draft on paper, including flowy styles, pleats and folds, and fitted or corset style designs, which is what I've been really interested in lately. I started by using black paper tape to mark out my style lines on my dress form. This is the very first time I've ever attempted this, and this technique allowed me to create a corset style panel under the bust. Once I was happy with these, I cut up some small pieces of cotton poplin and pinned them as smoothly as possible over the dress form. As you can see, the black tape is easily visible, and this allows me to trace right over the top with a pencil. It essentially gives you your pattern pieces without drafting on paper. For the bust area, I roughly hand gathered a long piece of fabric to ensure I had enough length to gather into elastic later on. Once I was happy with this, I removed the fabric pieces from the mannequin. It's important that you draw your grain lines and write what pieces they are before removing them, so it's easy to tell what it is later on. Then I neatened up the lines with pen and cut them out. I could have added seam allowance here and used this as my lining, but some pieces didn't have enough fabric around the edge for this, so I decided I would just pin them onto my real fabric and draw the seam allowances there before cutting, which worked fine. Construction was simple. I stitched the pieces together and overlocked the edges for more strength, and then I top stitched the seams in place to prevent them from moving on the bodice. I repeated the same steps, cutting out the pattern pieces from my lining fabric, stitching those together, and then I attached my label. For the gathered piece along the bust, I sewed together my fashion fabric and my lining fabric and made a channel for elastic, and then threaded that through with a safety pin. Here you can see me pinning it on top of my corset pieces on the mannequin. I actually had to remake the bust area because it was just far too short. It did not cover anything. Once I was happy with the gathered bust area and the amount of elastic I'd installed into it, I pinned this to the fashion fabric and sewed that in place. Then I lined up the lining fabric, pinned it in place, and sewed it neatly so that nothing could be seen from the inside. So here I'm just cutting up some pieces of the fashion fabric and the lining to make into some thin adjustable straps. For the straps, I was really torn between ones that would tie into a bow or thin adjustable straps, and I decided because this dress was going to have quite a lot of ruffled layers on the bottom half that I would keep the straps simple. I left part of the bodice open where the straps would be installed, and once I was happy with them, I inserted them through the bust area, stitched them in place, and then decided on the length for the adjustable portion of the straps. Now, I made a bit of a mistake and I didn't film any of the zip installation, which is probably a good thing. I had to unpick it and redo it and unpick it and redo it, and finally I got to the point where I was happy with it. For the bottom half of the dress, I decided it would look best if I drafted a quarter circle skirt in maxi length and then attached my tiers directly on top of that. And here you can see my two fur babies who decided that there was too much attention to paper and not enough attention to them. So they've come over to distract me, which is very easy to do. They're just so cute. Once I was happy with these pattern pieces, I cut them out of my lining fabric and stitched that together as I would any other skirt. There is a lot of ruffles and gathers on the bottom half of this dress, and I wanted to make sure that they were done right. So to make it look as even as possible, I split the length of the skirt into 3 panels. I measured the circumference of where those panels would lie and made sure that each panel of fabric that I would gather along that piece would be at least double the length. And here you can see me playing around with the mannequin, just making sure that the gathered fabric looks correct under the bust area. And I pinned that panel to the bodice so that I could sew them together. It is so hard sewing that much gathered fabric together, but I took it slow, I made it work, and it looked really good. Here you can see me trying on the dress with the bodice finished and only the first tier installed. I was so excited to try it on and see how it looked, and I was really pleased with it. All that was left to do after this was to attach the 2 remaining tiers to the rest of the skirt. And to ensure that those 2 tiers were stitched in the exact right spot on the skirt, I actually got the pattern piece that I had drafted earlier. I marked out exactly where the panels would lie and cut the pattern piece at those lines. I could then line that up with my skirt, draw those lines on, and then attach the tiers exactly where those markings were. This allowed me to align the tiers perfectly so that I had even distribution of the fabric. Once they were completed, the only thing left was to hem the lining of the dress, and I was done. I have to admit, I was so pleased with this project that the first time I tried it on after it was finished, I actually cried. 1, because I was probably happy to have it over and done with, but 2, I was just so happy with the way that it looked. I feel like this fabric and the style of dress just go together perfectly. I absolutely loved it. There was nothing that I would change about it. I actually worked on this dress over the course of a week and really only dedicated about 2 or 3 hours per night to the project, but I did get a Saturday and Sunday during that week where I could dedicate more time, probably about 6 or 8 hours on each of those days. So all up, I would estimate that this dress probably took anywhere from 25 to 35 hours, but I didn't actually count. The cost of the project was quite reasonable. I purchased 4 meters of this fabric at $30 a meter, which is about $120. The zip cost around $8, and my lining fabric was really affordable because I used cotton poplin, and I estimate that I probably used about 2 or 3 meters of that, which is usually around $2.75 per meter. The metal strap adjusters were something that I already had in my stash, but from memory I paid around $4 or $5 for a pack of 10, so they ended up working out to be about 80 cents for the pair. All in all, I am so happy with my final outcome. I actually wore this out on the weekend and I got so many compliments on it, so I was so pleased with it. And it's just so nice to hear somebody say that they love your dress and for you to be able to reply saying, "Thanks, I actually made it myself." Sewing isn't as common as it used to be, unfortunately. But I think it's really special to be able to take the time to sit down and make something all by yourself and to be able to proudly wear it in public and actually even get compliments on it. If you struggle to find garments that suit your style in stores, sewing allows you the freedom to create whatever you like. And the bonus is I get to feel really proud when I tell people that I made it myself.